Okay, so I want to talk about restaurant racism, aka dining while black. Okay, now in 2012, there was a study that was conducted and released by researchers from North Carolina State University. The name of the study was called Tableside Racism in Full Service Restaurants. Now, the researchers, they went around to different uh, full service restaurants to interview different waiters and waitresses. Okay, all of the there were 200 waiters and waitresses who were interviewed. Right, white and black waiters and waitresses who were interviewed, 200 in total. Okay, and all of the waiters and waitresses who were interviewed all worked at various full service restaurants like Denny's, IHOP's, Longhorn Steakhouse, BJ's, Bob Evans, um, Red Robin, Red Lobster, you name it, right? And 40%, which made up one third of all of the white waiters and waitresses, admitted that their quality of service depends on the race of the customer. So, what I want black people to remember is that only 40%, only one third of all of the white waiters and waitresses admitted that their quality of service depends on the race of the customer. Only 40% confess to it. So I would argue that all of the white waiters and waitresses, their quality of work depends on the race of the customer. All of the white waiters and waitresses, in my opinion, not just the 40%. The 40% were the ones who were just willing to be honest. You see, so for me, racism isn't based off of honesty, because there's a lot of, the other part of racism is dishonesty. See, only 50% of racism is honest. The other 50% is dishonest, which means it works undercover. Okay? So this is why it bugs me when black people go around saying race doesn't matter, it's not about race, when obviously it is, right? And black people are the biggest victims of racism. Yet, you're the only people who believe race doesn't matter. You're not the only people who say it, but you are the only people who actually believe in that. Asians know race matters. That's why black people deal with racism from Asian people every day. Latinos, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Salvadorians, they understand race matters because black people deal with racism from them every day. White people know and Arabs know that race matters because black people deal with racism from white people and Arabs every day. Okay, so the only people who believe race doesn't matter are black people. And how I know that is because black people are the only people on the planet who behave like race doesn't matter. We're the only people who act like race doesn't matter. Our quality of work. So when you compare black waiters and waitresses to white, there's a huge difference. Black people don't, the quality of service for black waiters and waitresses isn't, doesn't depend on the race of anybody. So but this whole thing needs to change. Black people are gonna have to start using race as a factor for everything we do. Race is gonna have to start to matter to black people at some point. Color is gonna have to start to matter to black people at some point. you know, if we want to survive at the end of the day. So this whole race doesn't matter. It's not about race bullshit. I'm tired of it. So let me break down some examples of racism that black people experience, that we experience at these different restaurants. Every day, every day, black people are experiencing racism at these restaurants, these white corporate owned restaurants. So, one example of discrimination that we as black people share is, you know, first of all, waiters and waitresses do not like black people sitting at their table section. This is why these white waiters and waitresses, they tell the host not to put black people at their table section. This happens. This happens, and I know this for a fact. This is actually what happens at these restaurants systematically throughout the country. Okay, white waiters, Asian waiters, Hispanic waiters, and waitresses do not like black people sitting at their table sections. And they make sure the hosts understand this. So when a black person, when a black family, when a black customer is sitting at a table section, that is served by a white waiter or a waitress, they take longer to greet their black customer. This is why when black people are seated at whatever table section, black people always have it's always the black customers who always have to flag down the white waiters and waitresses for service. Nobody else has to do that but black people. It's an embarrassment. Like, we shouldn't even be at these fucking racist ass restaurants anyway. We shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be there. Like, we're wasting our money, we're wasting our time. So, black customers are singled out. Okay? This is why it takes longer to be greeted by our waiters and waitresses at these racist restaurants. They don't want black people at their table section. Another example of racism that we as black people share at these different restaurants is we're least likely to be informed about any type of specials going on at the restaurant. Because not all specials are presented on the menu. A lot of times you have to be informed about certain specials. And sometimes when these different meal deals are on the menu, they're hard to spot. And you need assistance from the waiters or the waitress. And a lot of times, most of the time, these white waiters and waitresses, they don't inform black people about any specials or meal deals going on, because, black people are expected to pay full price for our food. Not only are we expected to pay full price, and we do because we're not often told about these different specials that are going on, but we're also expected to give a substantial tip, right? They want you to give, they want a good tip out of us. So they don't want to tell us about any specials so we can save ourselves some money, right? But they expect, a sizable tip. You know what I mean? And when you don't tip them the way they want, they'll cop an attitude with you. That's how these people are. This is why we don't need to be at these fucking restaurants. We don't need to be at these white corporate owned restaurants. Another example of racism that we as black people, share at these restaurants, you know, black customers who dine on our birthdays are usually ignored. So normally, when I say normally, that means for white customers, when a white customer is dining on their birthday, there's like a loudspeaker announcement. That way, everybody in the restaurant knows it's their birthday. There's, the different waiters and waitresses usually gather around and sing happy birthday song. And there's also a free dessert that is given to the person whose birthday it is, right? Well, for black customers, this usually doesn't happen. A lot of times, if you mention it's your birthday, a lot of these white waiters and waitresses, they'd ignore it. They don't care. They don't care. See, the difference between black people and white people when it comes to these restaurants is that black people are just customers, whereas white people are actual guests. There's a difference between being a customer and being a guest. White people, white folks, when they walk into restaurants, they're treated as guests. When black people are in these restaurants, we're treated as customers. We're treated as, we're just money. That's all we are. They see money when we walk in. That's all we are. Okay, so, and I'm just being honest. Just being honest. So this is why black people should not be in white restaurants or Asian restaurants or whatever non-black restaurant. Okay? Another example of racism, discrimination, prejudice that we as black people experience is when we request a condiment or an extra condiment order, like, when we request like ketchup, ranch, Thousand Island, honey mustard, an extra knife, an extra fork, more juice or soda or whatever. A lot of these waiters and waitresses will they'll roll their eyes or grunt out of discomfort because we have the audacity to keep asking for things. A lot of these waiters and waitresses, they don't like when black people ask for things, although we're paying our money to be here. Although we're investing our time to be here, a lot of these waiters and waitresses will cop an attitude with black people just because we're black people. That's all it is. Just because we're black people, and we're making a request. A lot of these white waiters and waitresses, they take our request wrong. You know what I mean? And they only take it wrong because we're black. Remember, their quality of service depends on the race of the customer. Another example of discrimination, prejudice that black people, that we experience. And, this is going to be my final example. I can be here, for days giving examples of racism that black people experience, that we experience. But a big one that I really have to touch on is the fake smiling. These white waiters and waitresses, they'll smile in black people's faces. Fake politeness, while standing in a, bothered posture. You know what I mean? Notice that. Notice the way they're standing when, there's words exchange or wherever the case. You're telling them something or asking them something. You'll notice that they're standing like they're like they're uncomfortable, because they are. Even when they're fake smiling, when you're talking to them, understand that they're fake smiling. They don't want to stand there, listen to you talk. They don't want to stand there and listen to you ask, demand something. They don't, they don't want to be there for that. They have to be there because they want your tip. So they're going to give you a fake smile because they want your tip. They're going to give you pretend politeness because they want your tip. Then after the fake smile, after the pretend politeness, they run back to the kitchen or they run back behind the counter with other waiters and waitresses and they talk shit about you behind your back. That's what they do. So, it's in our best interest as a race, as a collective, as a people together. Black people should only be supporting black-owned businesses. Okay? Black-owned businesses. Soul food restaurants, barbecue restaurants, black-owned. Jamaican restaurants, Haitian restaurants, any type of ethnic African restaurant, everything must be black-owned that we patronize. Any type of burger restaurant, even if it's a Mexican restaurant, or it's a restaurant that serves Mexican food. If it's black-owned, it's supported. If it's like a black-owned Chinese restaurant, support it. You're not limited. We don't have to only eat soul food. We don't have to only eat Jamaican food. I'm not saying that. When we go out to these different restaurants or, when we go out to eat, I like to have Mexican food every once in a while. Shit, I'm from California. I love Mexican food. But, I'd rather dine at a black-owned Mexican food restaurant. You know what I mean? So, that's just the point that I'm trying to make. Let's spend our time, let's spend our financial resources with other black people. At black-owned restaurants or in black-owned restaurants, we won't deal with all this discrimination and prejudice and all this bullshit. So, we need to do the right thing and support black ownership. Support black ownership. If you're not going to eat at a black-owned restaurant, then you should be having a home-cooked meal. Point blank, period. So, I hope you guys appreciate the information. I hope you guys appreciate the video. All right, I'm Cali Red, Cali with a K, Red with a double D. I'm recording this video out in Southern California. I'm in the Inland Empire. The Inland Empire consists of 2 neighboring counties, Riverside County and San Bernardino County. So I want to give a special shout out to all black people throughout the Inland Empire. Riverside County, San Bernardino County, I want to give a shout out and spread my love to all black people throughout the Inland Empire. And for black people across the world, until the next video, I love you. Be safe. Stay blessed. Black power.